Hi there, welcome back to the channel. I am Mackie. Sid is leaping about like a crazy person behind me. Today we wanted to give you guys a look at what our stretching routine looks like. I will admit Sid is much better about stretching every day than I am. She says I don't stretch. I probably stretch every 3 days, maybe 4 would be my guess. But we have a pretty good routine that we've gotten from Dane, who is our PT at Revo PT. We've linked their channel, but we will do so again in case you want to check out their stuff. They've got some really good stuff. Anyway, today we're just going to do kind of a quick and dirty what our stretching routine looks like and why. And Sid's going to be our model and explain what she's doing.
Okay, so I've gotten a lot of questions recently about the rehab for my knee. This is all part of that. If you have any sort of lingering issues, you need to be better about stretching and rolling and like prehab, as they call it. Preventative rehab.
I just thought it was before rehab.
I don't know actually what it stands for. In my head, it stands for preventative rehab.
I like it.
So, stretching in general is good. There are different schools of thought on what is the most effective. It depends a little bit whether your goal is increased flexibility or less injury.
I'm just going to interrupt Sid right now and say the most effective stretching is actually stretching.
Right.
Whatever will make you actually stretch, that's when you should stretch.
A few just general rules about stretching. You want to do your stretching when you're warm. So stretch after a ride, generally not before. Sometimes I'll stretch before if I like just got out of the car and just feel like, but then I try to be really gentle because when your muscles are warm and limber, you're less likely to hurt yourself stretching, which is possible to do.
Which is sort of the reverse of what you want.
Exactly. So generally, I think the accepted school of thought on stretching now is that you should be going into positions that are not excruciatingly painful and then holding them for a while. So you're not just like trying to contort yourself and like put your head on the ground or whatever. Like you want to do what's right at that limit before it starts like hurting, and you want to hold that for as long as you have the patience.
2 to 3 minutes is generally what they seem to say.
I don't time it.
Sid looks at her phone. I look at my phone. So that's a great way to forget about what position you're in, is just get distracted by the internet. Stretches
specifically for mountain bikers. There are certain muscle groups that are very tight for those of us who ride bikes and also those of us who sit for a living. The things that Mackie and I do in life are cycling, driving in the car, and sitting and working on our computers. So that means that our hips are just like not great. So when you're cycling,
I think your hips are great.
Hips don't lie. They don't lie, but they're not great. So, all right, your good, like, aggressive mountain biking position is here. That's a lot of bend in the hips, right? This is what we call a hip hinge. Talked about this when we worked with Lee McCormick, all sorts of stuff. The point is, you're bent like this. If you're sitting in a chair, I can't really do this without a chair. The point is, you're bent. You spend a lot of time bend at the hips. So one of the stretches that we do is something, Dane calls it a couch stretch. It has other names, but basically, you're just holding this position for a long time. And this, you might want to shoot from the other side. But this is stretching out this hip flexor and psoas and all of this stuff, and basically just putting it in a straight line with a little bit of stress on it. Not so much that you're gonna wake up crippled in the morning, which I did the first time I did this stretch because I didn't get it, so I just was like going way too deep. You can do a lot of variations on this. If you're super bendy, which I am not, but I can almost do this yoga pose, which is...
It's probably something that ends with na, because it's a yoga pose.
It's a yoga pose. It really gets you in the hip flexors. I don't do this after really hard workouts. I do this on like rest days, because otherwise I will feel it. But gentle stretch for your hip flexors. You can also go into a slightly wider stance, lean in, really open up your hips. You can also do this. Just back stretch. And then you're going to want to do that on both sides, which should be obvious, but maybe isn't. I don't know. This next stretch is the ubiquitous pigeon stretch. Looks like this. This one really gets you in the... Sorry, we're bike racers. We're not like anatomy and physiology experts. I don't know what it is, but it's like this lower butt part.
So basically,
it's a part that you use a lot when you're riding a bike.
one leg is crossed in front of her.
Like a pigeon,
And
kind of.
then, yeah, I don't think this looks
like
anything like a pigeon. And then the other leg is pushed across there. And then if you are super flexible and this does not feel like anything, but remember you have to hold it for 3 minutes, the lower down you go, the more stretch it is.
But either way is good. It's good. It's like, you know, moving your body is good. If you do find this position super difficult to get into, I think there are some modifications. You can put a yoga block under here.
On your far leg.
Well, basically, because like
Yeah,
I'm pretty
so you
flexible
can-
in this direction, so I go to the ground and rest on the ground. But if you're stuck here, which
You
is
can
kind
put
of
something underneath your
right,
butt,
so
basically.
that you're just staying in this position as opposed to like balancing all your weight on a muscle that's
Okay.
sore.
Yeah.
Because when I do this, I go onto the ground,
Yeah.
so my weight is supported by the ground.
You're also, the goal is to keep your hips level, more or less, as opposed to like rotating super far towards one side or the other.
Which I think I do decently, but probably not.
No, you do. I was just saying for people who haven't done as many pigeons as you
Would
have.
you like to demonstrate what it looks like when your hips are
No,
not
thank you. And then switch.
Hamstrings, another muscle group that is very tight for cyclists. We don't aggressively stretch our hamstrings because that usually doesn't end well. However, honestly, just like sitting like this in a position where you are keeping your sit bones very solidly into the ground is a pretty good hamstring stretch. Like, I don't need to lean forward at all. I can lean forward a little bit and I start to feel it. One thing you don't want to do with stretching in general is like bounce. Like you see people, especially like kids on the track team, to like stretch, they're like, and then eventually they'll get there, but that's not good for you.
Also, you don't want to curve your back in this position.
Right.
That's my tendency. I'm like,
'Cause
look
then
how
you're-
I can reach my toes,
Then
but
you're
I'm actually
bending
just
your
bending my back.
Right? So, good hamstring stretch is just sitting like this. Like you can do this. You don't need a mat or anything. You can sit on flat ground
And
because it's not hard
if
on
you can't bend as much as sit is, slide back a little bit for us and put your arms on the mat. You can do that. If that's a stretch for you, do that. If you need more of a stretch, you can lean farther forward. If you're ridiculously flexible, you will put your chest on your knees, and there's no way I will ever be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think for cyclists or runners or any sort of endurance athletes, like incredible flexibility is not necessarily the goal. Like if you want to just be flexible to like show off, like that's awesome. Or if you do martial arts or something where that actually comes in handy. However, a lot of studies say that for endurance, like power athletes, for that like sort of springiness, like you actually don't want to have like incredibly loose muscles. Which is why some people say don't stretch before your workout. I think, honestly, you should do whatever works for you and makes you feel better. I don't think that's been established one way or the other, but my point is more like the goal for me is not to be able to like have my head on.
The goal is injury.
Because that is not a feasible goal.
The goal is injury prevention.
Exactly.
And if your muscles are super tight, you're more likely to get injured.
Okay, so the other muscle group that I want to talk about is shoulders and lats and thoracic spine mobility. This is huge, I think, for a lot of mountain bikers because, I'm not going to name names, but the prevailing wisdom of mountain biking for a long time has been to have your elbows out like this. This is not sweet for your shoulders here. So if you ride like this and you have shoulder pain,
We're not surprised.
this is more what you're looking for.
Yeah. So
Demonstrate totally off the bike.
your
You're looking
arms
for
are
lat power,
relaxed.
elbows,
Yeah, relaxed elbows.
not putting a ton of force into here.
No.
The other thing, and this is if you're on a road bike a lot, you tend to hunch here. So anything that sort of like loosens up your thoracic spine is something that you want to be doing. So just opening this, opening your back, keeping those shoulders back. You can see I can have my shoulders back and have a pretty relaxed bike position. This is what I shoot for, more or less, as opposed to this. This puts a lot of pressure on the shoulders and caves in the upper back. So a few thoracic spine mobility things. One, just gentle movement here. This is one where I really have a tendency to try to do this bouncing thing. Like I don't know why, I just want to be more mobile than I am. But gentle movement, opening up your thoracic spine. To borrow from yoga, we're gonna do some cow to cat.
And this is just spine mobility, thoracic spine mobility again.
And it just like feels really good. I don't think there's anyone that's like, oh, I hate cow cat. It's just the best. I also really like Cobra for like no reason. Other than that, it just feels amazing. I don't know if it's good for me or not, but it feels so good. The other thoracic spine opener that I do, again, primarily just because it feels really good and I get really tight shoulders, is this, which is the absolute opposite of the position you're in on a bike. So basically that's the moral of this lesson. Put yourself in positions that are the opposite of where you spend the rest of your day, and you're doing something right. All right, so let's talk about foam rolling. Foam rolling is great. I think people overdo it a lot. Like if you are not finding super tight trigger points in your muscles, probably don't need to be foam rolling. I kind of do this on a case by case basis. If you do find something, which I usually do. Also, you don't have to use a foam roller. Foam rollers are big and inconvenient. You can use a lacrosse ball. I also have this handy torture device that was recommended to me. It is called the Orb. It is just way more intense than a foam roller. So if you're a masochist and this is not enough for you,
or you don't want to carry around a giant foam roller all the time.
So basically, with the foam rolling, we do what our PT Dane calls a tack and stretch. So when you do find something, you want to move across the grain of the muscle like this, because just going up and down doesn't really do much other than like let you know what hurts. I think I might be foam rolling bruised there actually. So I'm gonna move over to the other side. That's just something to be aware of as a mountain biker.
So what muscles can you foam roll?
Well, you can foam roll anything. One thing that we don't waste time doing is foam rolling our IT band. This is something that a lot of people love, foam rolling their IT band, because it's really satisfying. It hurts like hell. It doesn't, however, do much to loosen up the IT band, because the IT band is not a muscle.
It's a band.
I don't know what it is, but the way Dane illustrated this to us is he said you can hang a, what did he say?
Semi-truck.
A semi-truck from an IT band, like a cadaver IT band. So like they're like solid. So if you have pain in your IT band, it's probably related to tightness elsewhere that is pulling on the IT band, basically.
So you can try to roll your IT band as much as you want, and it ain't gonna do nothing.
It'll feel super satisfying, but not much will come of it. Anyway, so to foam roll effectively, you want to be moving across the grain of the muscle, like I'm doing here, as opposed to just up and down. You can kind of go up and down until you find something, and then back and forth, or move the joint. This doesn't do much on the roller. However, if I put this in here, go deep in here, and then move this joint, you feel that for sure. So I typically foam roll calves, adductors, just like this inside of your quad, and then straight up and down the quad, and then glutes and glute med. I think that's what this is, which is this hip part, and that you really feel. So anyway, to sort of demonstrate that principle of moving the joint, if you get on a spot that feels tight, and you do this, and it feels pretty intense, and then you can do that at the same time as you go across the grain of the muscle. And this really works. I've definitely Like, I used to foam roll a lot. Before I started doing kind of this strategy, nothing would really ever get better. Doing this, if I'm not actively, you know, making my muscles tight again, which I usually am, but I can in a few days get it to the point where I roll over the muscles and don't feel anything that I need to spend time doing this on. Anyway, so calf, adductor, quad like this. That's pretty good right now, actually. And then just this, basically just sit on the orb. This is always intense, this like hip thing, or whatever I'm sitting on right now. This one I haven't really gotten to get much better, but it does feel like it's doing something.
And then as opposed to rolling up and down, you're kind of rotating your body side to side.
Yeah. Or I can do, move the joint. Ow, that hurts too much. But it's good. You want to be using your glutes when you're riding your bike. So if your glutes are never sore and it's only your quads, your positioning probably needs some work. So that is the basic gist of stretching routine that I do pretty much every day. If I don't, I regret it and I start to have knee issues again. So it is definitely preventative. If we all stretch for an hour a day, that would probably result in really limber, happy muscles, but not a very good social life. So you have to make balances. You have to find something that you will do and that feels good and that doesn't cause you other problems. That's relatively simple and easy to remember. If I don't have very much time, I will just do the stretching and skip the foam rolling. If I have something that I like wake up and feels really tight, sometimes I would foam roll right away in the morning. I do try to like move and warm up my muscles a little bit before I do that. As we talked about, better to stretch and foam roll and all this when you have warm muscles. I know after a big summer of riding bikes that a lot of you have acquired some aches and pains, and starting something like a stretching routine, especially if you have a nice cat to keep you company, starting something like a stretching routine might help with that. So hopefully this was helpful. And yeah, Lily says to be more awesome.
So does your shirt.
No, she doesn't want to be more awesome. She actually hates me.
She's just using you for your petting capabilities.
Oh, there we go. No, here.
Oh, rile her up. Rile her up.